Yeah. Yeah. You can watch it. And hello and welcome to the new rebooted, even more cinematic exponential show of my mum said I could watch it here in 2024. Today I am how are you? Love your hair. Love to skin you in, all of that. I'm taking a weird one here in that this is many ways tying up a lot of the shows we've seen while giving us new ventures. This is much glossier than what we've covered. This is Jason Lives, um, semicolon, very small print, Friday the 13th, part six. I've chosen it specifically. This is 1986. So I'm 10 when it's made. My belief in terms of seeing this, I didn't see this until much later. I think it's about 1990. Post blockbuster, but pre really being old enough to get away with it. So I suspect it was Ritz. At that point, you have the Friday the 13th TV series. Um, you have rumors of a Star Wars prequel. And you have this, which did get some coverage on the back of Vertigo Comics. No, actually, that would tell a lie. That was Friday the 13th, part eight. Jason Takes Manhattan had a whole monthly spread. My memory of this as well is that this really is the first film where I gave anything, any credence to the Friday the 13th films. I had seen the first one. This is the one that I've rewatched the most. I did a thing just for that. Oh, really? I should be a complete Israel. I'll watch them all. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really tied into them. Um, there's not much copy now. This though is the reason why I think I keep coming back to it is Friday the 13th Part Six. Jason Lives. Jason Lives very much as I've come to discover was because at this point Part five was seen as the Halloween 3 season of the Witch of the franchise. Um, this is his return of Michael Myers. It's also, as you can see, Alan there digging a hole. Is the one where Jason is supernatural. The conversation's over. He is a supernatural being. I know people would go, well, obviously he was some sort of being given the ice pick in the head in two, blah blah blah. But really, um, this is the explicitness, and anyone who had issues with his ability to survive anything, just watch a Willis Schwarzenegger film of the time. And I'm not familiar with the Fast and the Furious oeuvre, but I do believe it involved a Skoda in space. So this is Jason is a supernatural being, requires supernatural rituals in order to get rid of him. The rest of the premise is Friday the 13th. I don't know what I have to do. Once Jason becomes alive, he goes on a rampage of randos while actually trying to get back to Crystal Lake because that has always been his personal vendetta. The blue denim guy is an absolute duff called Tommy Jarvis, who's been introduced in the earlier films. He brings back Jason. I needed to check that he was dead. He was dead. He was dead, Tommy, and you brought him back. And then wanders around. Um, Basically, there is an epitome of privilege with him. He just wanders around. Yes, he annoys the sheriff, but the sheriff's daughter absolutely digs him. Picks up a book. He does the while Jason is off killing everyone at random. Uh, he does the 80s equivalent of doom scrolling the situation, which is finds a couple of paperbacks which say occult. Could it might as well be Yakult from the looks of them, and goes, well, obviously we've got to put a chain around him and put him back in the pond. In the meantime itself, the story does make some effort. The set pieces are definitely entertaining. this is a film which explains why DVD did have Skip to a Kill incorporated into it. There's some elements of humor and knowingness. There's a scene right at the intro sequence itself is knowing. I don't know if I'd call it a comedy because the jokes aren't that strong, but it does know what it is when Jason walks in James Bond style in the intro sequence of his own eye, and rather than pulling a gun, pulls a machete. It's very much of its time. It's taking the pot shots of the yuppie interest of the time, paintball, uh, corporate country retreats. And it also understands that you've got to get rid of anyone who's a grown up very quickly. Camp counselors are got rid of very quickly. Um, the cops are pretty much dismissed except for the absolute Dewey. And as we're about to see, the thing that really gets me is that Tommy never really cares about the fact that Alan, who broke out of the mental asylum with him, and is completely nervous, high anxiety about the entire thing. He's only done it out of love for you, Tommy. That's pretty apparent. He did it because he loves you, because it's 1986, and I strongly suspect, in terms of the state that he's in, that it is about certain inequalities and that man's society's inability to respect man's love for another man. He, in fact, dies saving you, Tommy, because he loves you. He has his heart ripped out, literally, for you, and you just run around with the sheriff's daughter, who, incidentally, does have the top trick of uh, dealing. Spoiler alert: the killing blow. Spoiler alert: there is a Friday the 13th part 7 and 8 and 9. Um, I'd say it's quite an entertaining film of an evening. It does do some highlight moments. I can see why Bruckheimer got involved. There's a set piece of teenagers having reckless sex in a camper van, which results in one of the most Bruckheimer-esque scenes I've ever had, which is serial killer killing the kids while the van is moving. The van practically explodes, and then serial killer just walking away from it. All within the camper van, while Alice Cooper plays teenage Frankenstein in the background. I mean, there's a strata of bombardment there that I can't do anything less than absolutely admire. There's also a considerable amount of decent jump scares, particularly when you consider this is part of that innovation. And lastly, I will say, I won't be the last. I'll say a couple more things about the other characters. Kane Hodder, um, really does do a lot physically in this film. I think there's a lot to be said about the editing to create that menace of Jason Voorhees in this. But Kane has just got stop and go. There's no moment where you ever see Jason work himself up. It is a shark. He's been described as a shark before, but it's that complete stillness to swiftness that he brings to it, the sheer physicality when you put him in a scene against someone else. And you believe he doesn't care, yet he is a strategist. He does, when he goes to kill off everyone in the camp, he knows to cut off the power in the communications. So he's not like just a total zombie. Um, the ending leaves a lot to be desired just because why does he suddenly go from this to that to the other? He just kill everyone. I don't think he would particularly, this isn't Jaws for the revenge. I don't think he'd be particularly bothered about what order he does this is and go for Tommy Jarvis first. Um, the sheriff is an interesting character. You see his arc with his disbelief of Tommy coming in towards the end. Not much else I would say in terms of coming back to it, but one final thought. They do rebrand Crystal Lake. It has been rebranded. They do touch on the idea that we are much more aware of. I'm certainly more aware of now of rebranding, of hiding the secret, hiding those societies, which we see in Freddy versus Jason, and the fact that the teenagers are making up their own ghost stories and card games over Jason. As I do this and are recording and are downloading Dead by Daylight, says that while the franchise hasn't been seen for some time, uh this is the tone I think it needs to come back. And I do not believe that in terms of cinema or even TV that we have in any way seen the last of Jason Voorhees. So with that in mind, sweet dreams.